Thank you for introduction and for an invitation. Thank you, Sebastien and Dušan, to be here with us. It's really nice to be inside the gallery space itself. So why don't we actually start with your work that is here, Dušan? For you, it's Kateřina and Mirek, all 65,535 combinations of the alarm clock font. We can see that it's not only about meticulous work and filling, all those sheets, but it's also about this monumental scale and the number itself. So I don't know. I wonder really about this double bind of the work of this kind of civil and humble urge, or the scale of human labor next to actually the algorithmic labor. And on the other hand, this, immense, visual power. So can you elaborate on that, or even explain what you did?
Yeah, thank you very much for coming, and thanks for company. So the piece we did also together with you a couple of years ago, and it was comment on labor, and for me, labor and calculation as a kind of technology which we use. I think that calculation is present in many other works here in the exhibition, but for me the starting point was quite banal, because this kind of font was used in cheap shops, in the non-stop shops in Prague, where the sellers mark the price with a marker. So when it's changed, it was just replaced by another sticker. So I thought this is a easy way how to write a text, and it's easy to combine, and by hand you can really make something. And then I realized that, but this is strange, because the combination of these 16 parts might provide a much wider range of possibilities than the alphabet we use. And I asked my friend to calculate how many possible numbers come out from this font, and there was a 65,535 combination. So there is strange finity in this series, because it has a beginning and it has the end. And a friend of mine programmed a small app to really visualize all the combinations, and then we draw it, four of us. But Kateřina, one of my friends, she was the one. She drew the most of the signs, and it took about half year, not daily work, but we did it in a friendly manner. So for me, it is this strange paradox between this finite combinations, but at the same time there is interpretation done by people, by friends, and I like this balance between finity and infinity, because once this system is somehow used as a score for music or for a dance, so each sign can represent kind of movement or something else, then it becomes endless. So I like this capacity that we are able to use these limited systems and limited structure, but still we are able to open them to an endless, infinite universe.
Cool, thank you. You, Sebastien, are part of collective Troika, together with Eva Rucki and Conny Freyer, right? And here you have an art piece called "I Woke Up Scattered Across the Continents," if I'm not mistaken. So what we see is this spliced the sculptures from various, historical or geographical spheres, and you compose them back again into a new shape. So can you explain what is this strategy meant for, or whether it's some sort of new creature or new being?
For sure. Thanks for coming as well, and for having me here. The work that you see is it's like an evolution of a series of work we started back in 2015, where we a lot of the work we are doing is looking at the kind of underlying logic in digital technology, and one of them is, of course, like cutting, splicing, sampling, which is very interesting to us because it pretends to replace the world by some moments, and like, it's discretizing everything. And so we started with a real sculpture, the first one we've made, which was called Compression Loss. And we took a sculpture from Canova, which is the Venus from Canova, mostly because we happened to visit his studio. And in his studio, all the originals are full of nails everywhere. You see this like very bizarre kind of aesthetic of having this like pure, beautiful white marble sculpture punctuated with nails everywhere. And he reminded us like, wow, is it like an early form of sampling? Which it is. Those nails were there, so the assistant could copy faithfully with very elaborate pentagram the sculpture as precise as possible. So it's like an ancestor of 3D scanning. And fast forward to our era, like 2015, it's the beginning of like 3D scanning. It's like really the first time where you can scan an object with your iPhone through photogrammetry. You have more and more digital databases of historical artifacts, both uploaded by a member of the public, but also by institution in order to kind of preserve, digitize, and things like that. And what increasingly became like interesting to us is like the kind of equivalences all those sculptures have when you look into those databases, where you have like an ancient Egyptian artifact that is reduced to this kind of poltergeist, ethereal kind of materiality, where it's just the shell of the sculpture, and you have very often you have very little historiographical information about it. And there's zero authorship most of the time. You don't know the scale, you don't know the time, and they are put juxtaposed with things from completely different era, completely different culture, completely different continent, becoming all equivalent. And so this kind of combinatory approach that you can clearly see in Dušan's work is becoming like the kind of modus operandi by which we started to recombine those things. It's like if everything is equivalent and everything in the digital domain is stored in little morsels, like there is no linearity in the way the information or the materiality of those data is stored. It's scattered across disk, is scattered across data server, is scattered across the whole continent. And so we started to basically recombine those objects, and sculpture you see all different manifestation of a syncretic god which we love, because it's like also the god of technology. It's Hermes, and it's also an ambivalent god. It's like the guy that is morphing, that is transforming. That's the god of like the thief, the crossroad. So there's this kind of like imbued trickery within the figure itself. And so the sculpture recombined the figure of Thoth from a canopic jar, Hermes, different incarnation from ancient Egypt up until like the 18th century, and playfully they jumbled them up to create this kind of new modern digital syncretic god, representing also the way we approach and piecemeal everything from our belief system, the information we choose, etc., etc. In a nutshell. Thank you.
Before I pose another question, please, if you have anything shared with us, mainly if it's a question and if it's some sort of decryption of our talk, I will try to look at you whether you actually want to intervene and ask us anything, and hopefully it's not going to be just Q&As and after like what we discuss, but it's going to be more of a friendly, interactive discussion. Anyway, since you both actually emphasize this creative role of art, or art as showing the infinite possibilities from, let's say, finite confines of the business as usual or the usual usage of technologies, would you really see even like overall the role of art in actually decrypting the society or the social issues, the political issues we have, as maybe is actually embedded in the very title of this show. So do you have actually this very optimistic feel about art being the decryption, or is it just another code and another encryption?
Yeah, I'll start. We spoke about it yesterday briefly, that what strength art could have to really have an impact on society. And I believe that, okay, not every artifact has immediate impact or immediate influence on public, but the art piece stays in time or could be viewed again in a different context. So the one who needs to find the artworks might find it in a somehow different time maybe. But for me, the deconstructive quality of artistic strategies is something very important, like from the Bertolt Brecht theater, where there is this distancing tactic, that the viewer is not dragged into fantasies, but he is always aware that, okay, I'm watching something which is fiction, but this fiction is really seducing, but I have to have a critical approach to this seduction. So I think I personally believe that this strategy is one which really helps public to discover different layers behind the surface. So maybe this is something, and there are of course different emancipatory strategies. For me, the humor is one which is really like cheap and straightforward, and really helps to receive messages. But back to my tactics, I would rather I'm staying with this deconstructive tactics, which really dismantle the imaginary.
I mean, the work in the show is not super representative of like the broader kind of like approach we have. We also talk about it like briefly yesterday. I think there are many valid technique and strategy for art to be contributing to a greater understanding of the world that we live in. I think it's super critical in a time where we're facing so many crises, being political or ecological or whatnot. We are very much I feel at an inflection point in Western culture, where we need those kind of different strategy. And what appeals to me most is the possibility that art has to transcend language, in a sense that there is many things that I could try to point out or verbalize, but art enables you to, it's a strategy in itself to try to reconfigure a different ontology of the world around you, and try to reevaluate the metaphysical world by which we approach the kind of the world that is like surrounding us. That I think is to me it's the most appealing, the most interesting in the approach. So how do we do that? I mean, there's many different way, and there's like works that we've made where you start to make water rain upwards, or like a plant move, and that is employing like phenomenology to like confound your understanding of things. That's one example, for example.
You again both tend to emphasize this kind of deconstructive and even ontological relevance of art. So maybe let's come to the more, critical aspect of both of your works, or even more generally speaking, artistic strategies, because both pieces that we see work with some sort of mistake, or with some sort of glitch, with some sort of like hacking the system. So is this the strategy, or is my reading like correct in first place? And do we really have like some hope in regaining our agency, or maybe even our human control over technologies, through particularly like working with the glitch, with the maybe unintended usage of technologies like 3D printing or 3D scanning or even like the textual LLM hype?
I don't know. I'm seeing like Dušan's work, and my behind all the kind of revelation of like the amount of recombinatory possibility, like the overwhelming feeling that within that super simple system you can make two gigantic balls of like prints, all of which are different. There is kind of like an unfathomable largeness of like computation that is like made physical. So that's for me like very relevant already per se. And beyond that, there's also the fact that it's done by hand. So you have like at one point somebody that has been empathetic enough to become again like the computer in the very primordial of what a computer is, i.e. it's a person that makes simple operation before being a mechanical machine. That's what computers were. And there is like a past maybe that is very interesting, where you start to decompose technology and reappropriate it on kind of a kind of visceral level. Because it's one thing to say, there's 65,536 possibilities there, or 2 to the power of 16 or whatever, and there's another thing spending 4 months deciphering them. And I would love to talk to your friends that have been like doing that for a long time. For specifically that reason, why I'm thinking is important is like it's a weird thing that happened. Like I'm making a parallel with a series of work that we are doing where we're painting raw format digital imagery with 16 color of red, 16 color of green, 16 color of blue, and they're all pixelated and they're all painted by number, and they take also like several months to complete. What I found the most interesting bit is like the space that is created in the mind of the artist making the work at that precise moment, where you are in between heavy computation and heavy logic and complete introspection. And that is like a space that the work creates for a very fleeting moment, where you manage to associate two states of mind that are normally not so compatible in our Western frame of mind, right? And you empathize with like a completely different thing that might be intelligent one day, which is a machine. And I think that is like perhaps very often under-talked, but probably the richest moment in the practice, for me at least.
For me, there is also, as Sebastien said, that this artistic approach, which is maybe could be non-verbal, or so there is a kind of different level of communication, the contents through emotions, through body, through physical experience, which is, I think, something higher or richer than just simple computing. And I found it also interesting at your portfolio or your previous works that you work quite often with the stones, with the resources, with the materials, and you present like salt in the gallery and the physicality. So I think that besides somehow provoking our like calculation capacities, which genius chess players have themselves, or many mathematicians, they have it. So what's happened here, that there are in the exhibition, there are like even different approaches, not only mathematical, but kind of different approaches. For example, this BCAA video installation next door was somehow for me like enriching, because I saw kind of DIY complex storytelling with also DIY hero. So somebody who is not somehow regular guy, but he tries to invent a tactic how to gain back the property which is somehow lost. So I felt like, okay, this is kind of a low cost installation, but the message is quite strong. even with the very kind of DIY tactic. So I like at the art that it really can create these shortcuts, and yeah, I can have some more examples, but we can get this.
Yeah, speaking of these various artistic strategies or attitudes and forms and genres, let's actually put tiny bit, or let me put your work into context. For instance, for you, Dušan, what is really characteristic is this work with human-made, meaning and the very construction of meaning, particularly through language and the language codes, labor and its world, and economy, and even like the human versus algorithmic labor. So these are actually topics that may be still connected to post-conceptual, condition or post-conceptual art, and the art that really pertains to the human world. While for instance, Troika is more focused on actually nature or the extra-human or the post-anthropocentric world, and you work more with shapes, with volumes, with physical elements, such as like salt or dark matter. So for you, Dušan, is that like a proper characterization? Would you still be fitting the post-conceptual condition?
Probably yes, but I also have to say that the shifting of the center of attention is something which always interests me, and I was thinking also about this shifting of the center of possible minds out of the human body into the different entities which we are able to somehow do in our lives, which for me it is interesting. But also I recently made a show which was inspired by the fact that in our own bodies we have like thinking entities which are not connected to our own brain. So even within our own bodies, like intestine, like the gut, has a somehow autonomous nerve system which acts by itself. Like sometimes it's connected with brain, but hunger or somehow the chemical processes which happens in our stomach are somehow autonomously self-organized. So I think that there is a even stranger, this traveling of the minds could be even more strange than only dedicated it to the stones or to the material. So I found it, maybe I do not illustrate it in my own works, but I'm interested in this shifting.
Was my characterization actually somehow on point, or how do you even relate yourself to post-anthropocentric turn, or like environmentally oriented art, which is a huge thing at the moment? But your collective has been established like 2003, I believe. So you had like a long time to observe the shifts of how artists actually are tackling, the ecological cataclysm or environmental sensitivity. So what would be your perspective on that?
I'm not sure. I'm not a curator, so I'm not sure. There's like many very intelligent things to say. I can see it just from our perspective as artists. It's like, yes, it's something that has been more and more coming up, as I think it's a natural reaction to looming crisis. And it's like the fact that more and more artists are looking at, okay, what caused the environmental crisis, how those are interlinked with social and political organization. It's a natural reaction of like wanting to do something or wanting to understand the world you're living in. We have been doing that for quite a long time now, with different guys and different approaches. Some were like much more abstract at the beginning, and some are like much more embodied. I don't know. It's too large of a question to be able to tackle in a sort of way, if you know what I mean.
I don't know. I would need images in the back. Anyway, I want to turn to the public, whether you have already thought of some question. Yeah, there is one.
Now I have to speak into something. It's a bit scary now. About the work in this room, and to go back to your opening, speaking about it being possibly something which could instruct music or dance. This is very interesting for me. I play in a number of ensembles in Germany and Austria playing only new music, and notation for the last 50, 60 years is become paramount to how Western music develops. It was also interesting what you said after this about interpretation, about is it encoding, is it hiding? And the first thing, if I look at this, you have these 16,500 possible permutations. And this reminds me of Hertz and 12 notes in Western music, because of course, Hertz are fundamentally an indefinite number of sounds, audible or inaudible, so wavelength basically. And the last 500 years of Western music has been an attempt to put these into 12 notes, to correct them in a way which makes us able to play together on instruments. And yet the last 60 years, 70 years, maybe a bit longer, and I'll come to your comment about hacking, has been how to ruin this, how to destroy this. The whole idea of what we can do with Western instruments is all about extended techniques and about getting away from these 12 notes, which, interrupting how the instrument works. So that was a long way to ask, have you actually used this in any musical instructive form as of yet?
Thank you for nice question. Not yet. I haven't used it yet, but the music was actually the first metaphor which I had in mind when I was thinking about these limited and non-limited structures. And for me, it is, of course, the music is also kind of a crazy invention itself, because it comes of nothing and it really carries the meaning. So it is one of the cultural inventions. It's really fascinating for me. But what I would like to provoke with this approach is like to inventing a different kind of systems and different kind of languages. We were speaking about the limitations our language and terms we are taught to use, like in politics, in economy. They somehow determines the solution we find to. So we were speaking about how to widen the language and how to shift it, as you said, that in the music there is this critical process toward the limited structure. So I'm just fascinated by our ability to like to funny example, but the football itself is a kind of, for me, culturally crazy invention. Like there is this joy of moving with the ball, and suddenly you have a huge business with it, and suddenly you have a whole culture and crazy like global phenomenon. So there is this strange cultural ability to invent something which is like, which culturally can unite people and can enrich, and at the same time we can invent many things which strengthen control and extractivism. So we have this strange different abilities to invent many different systems. Thanks.
I mean, if I can add something completely different, we have a show currently in Schönkunstler in Frankfurt, and for that we developed like a piece of music, which is interesting for us because we are not strictly speaking trained musician, And they're all a cappella voices that are like sung by, like with AI tools, but they are MIDI instruments, but you can really start to play with like the formant and the amount of air, the pitch, you can draw everything. So it's like, for me, it was an amazing tool to be able to play with. And what is also really cool is that you don't have to pitch it onto anything. And what I've been trying to do there is like we had like an incredible opportunity to go and bother every researcher we wanted at Cambridge University for 2 years. We had a weird kind of residency there, and we went to see a professor called Eric Kirschenbaum, and he completely blew our mind because he does ethology and he does animal communication. And he was talking to us about how do they know now that, they know how to decrypt wolf howling. And wolf howling, like musically speaking, in terms of notation, is only harmonics. So every harmonics is carrying a portion of the meaning. And when I heard that, I was like, that is fascinating. Imagine, like, every human language I know is based on a sequential representation of words that is like sequence over time. Whereas a wolf or a dolphin or perhaps extraterrestrial alien would probably speak everything at once. And that was fascinating. So I made like a whole track where I was a cappella singer, which is the same singer, sing everything at once, all the time, and deliver the whole sentence at the same time. It's very difficult to understand, but this is the kind of like position where I think it's really interesting to see, because it kind of very immediately completely challenged very basic fundamental assumption of how we communicate, how we imagine language, how that was what I was thinking about when you talk about notation. And it's unnotable. I don't know how to note that.
Thank you for the question. We can always have another one. Yeah, of course.
I have a very simple question. We came here about half an hour before the end of the opening times, so we didn't have much time to actually go through the exhibition. But and the first impression is this is very high value production, and it's also collective production. So I just wonder how you do it as a collective, how you do put shows together, and how you whether you have work which is being shown in some kind of sequence, going around, traveling, or whether you produce new work more often.
Who is the correct question directed to?
Yeah, but it's the production, and I mean this is the
Are you talking about?
yeah, about the show, the whole show. When one walks in, this is because
this isn't a time group. This is a group show.
I know,
Like many artists.
How many artists then? If you
There's 45 if you're talking about individuals, there's 3 of them are collected, so it's 33 artists.
33. There you go. Oh, that's impressive organization, yes. And when you
Need to see. Right, I'll say something. I'm the director of the gallery. So the show was curated by a curator called Nadim Saman. He was working at the Kunstwerke KW Institute of Contemporary Arts in Berlin. He developed this exhibition out of a book, which we've actually had translated. He wrote it in English, we translated it into Czech for this exhibition, also supported by the Goethe-Institute. And he developed this kind of concept of thinking about, technology and art and how they're interacting really during the COVID lockdowns. He was inspired by that, and conceptualizing it into these 3 kind of ways of looking at it, whether you're kind of locked in, whether you're locked out, or whether you're just kind of, collapsing space-time through these kind of like, interactions with the digital sphere. He came up with the idea for the exhibition, and then the show was traveling from Berlin to Copenhagen, and then we're the third venue. So each time we've reconceptualized the exhibition, particularly adding with some local artists. So we arranged for Nadim to do a series of studio visits with Czech artists, and then he chose some of the artists he wanted to work with, one which was Dušan Zahoranský. And so we've tried to, here we were very keen to make it work with the architecture of the building, to work with kind of contemporary local talking points as well, to really make sure that the kind of local voice is in collaboration or in conversation with the kind of international artists working with this as well. And sadly, this is the last version of the show, so it comes to an end in mid-May, but we're very happy to have them here.
Well, I just would say congratulations, because it's certainly is impressive show in the context of Rudolfinum, and we certainly come back.
Please come back. It's with free admission, so you can spend your time.
And maybe I can add that I've seen the show in Berlin, and accidentally I bought the book even like 2 years ago before the show, so I was somehow interested in the topic. And when I saw the show in Cave, I said, okay, that's fulfill my expectations. That okay, these are the artworks which really pose the questions which are interesting. And you're right that some of the installations are generous, and I think that this is the advantage of the long time project, that the exhibition already was not built for Rudolfinum, but it was already built in a good manner before, but now it's wider, and the artwork it's done in 2019, I think. So it's not a new work, but so this is the older work, which I also somehow like that, because to produce a new work, it's a lot of effort and a lot of difficult decisions. But I was pleased that Nadim somehow understood the context and just include the work in the show. So it's not produced newly, but it's ecological more.
But yes, in a nutshell, they are expensive venture to do. Please tell your government to support culture. Please tell your friends to support culture. Join the museum member patrons program.
Okay.
Yeah, culture.
Speaking of the exhibition as a whole, are you maybe even one thing that I really wonder about is the status of metaphors. Artists usually naturally use metaphors, and this exhibition is actually structured around what you've already mentioned, like being locked in a black site, being locked out from black boxes of our culture, and then being like the relationship between inside and outside being altogether scrambled, as in the metaphor of the black hole. So do you find yourself like fitting the place you are, or do you feel like you're locked in or locked down or scrambled?
Me, I have somehow a good experience by walking in this space and seeing. I just have this cluster duck, the meme scene, which is something I was thinking for a long time. Okay, these memes, they are just crazy, and there is such a creativity, and the creativity is so massive, and I was like, I have to do something with it, and somebody else did it in a better way. So I was just like, that's good, that's fine, just let's be active. So I think I enjoy the show because of that I really discovered interesting solutions and problematic questions posed by different artists, and it somehow makes me feel like, okay, I'm not crazy that much, but yeah, we have a certain distance over the catastrophes and we can handle them in a way.
I mean, those metaphors are perfectly suitable to try to decipher such a complex topic. I think it's an amazing correctional tool that it deployed in order to try to make sense onto something that is super rapidly evolving, ever changing, and where we can't clearly see the impact of it. Like just before, I was discussing, and somebody asked, like, what's your prediction about, like, is cultures gonna disappear into this meandrum? And nobody can ascertain that. You have like production of like video fueled by AI that is like gonna go exponentially rapidly. It affects every kind of strategy. It affects like the core of capitalism itself. Who knows? So those metaphors are super powerful. I also you were talking about the cluster duck meme scene. There's one that I photographed this morning, which I love. It says, my favorite conspiracy theory is that everything is going to be okay.
Okay, let's hope so. And let's hope there's some other questions even from the audience. I still have few, but I will run out soon. If not, I have like
Yeah, thank you very much. I would be interested to learn a bit more about Troika and the collaboration, like how this is, like how you do it, basically, like collaborating together.
Okay, so that's a question that we get asked like for certain every talk. But the answer is still like as elusive as possible because I don't know what to answer. We are three people that have found each other in a weird symbiotic way. We've been working together for like nearly 25 years now, 23 years. I don't exactly know how to describe. We all work together. We all have ideas. We all like contribute to the thing, and by chance, you want to go in very similar directions, which is A, very interesting, and B, there is a freshness in the surprise. Like each of us still manage, despite the time, to surprise the other, which is kind of a unique situation, I guess. It forms very organically. We started to work together like with no grand plan, and we stuck together. And I think there is also something that is that is a core kind of fundamental thought that we share, that perhaps the kind of authorship that is attributed to contemporary artists is not so singular, if you know what I mean. There is a plethora of way of doing things. This is one of them, and that's about it. At the end of the day, I still think as artists you are just sensitive to things. I think like the realm of ideas is something that has its own life, that has its own agency, that is informed by all of us. This kind of weird idea of zeitgeist or the Jungian conscious, like collective unconsciousness. Are we just fishing? So we may be better at fishing, and then you nurture, but I don't. So there's no secret. So
some other questions? Okay.
Go all the way to pick this up just to bring it back to me. Thank you. Perhaps I am just hearing what I wanted to hear earlier, but I thought I heard this mention of mechanical sympathy. This piece in particular kind of strikes me as being an example of that, right? Like putting yourself in the mind of our tools. What do you gain from that? Like, what is the point of turning yourself into a computer, if you will?
Yeah, that's a good questions. And by the time I was thinking about that piece, I somehow find a book of Reza Negarestani about artificial intelligence, which I have not read fully because it was a little bit over my capacity, but I was really I ran through and I was fascinated. And I was thinking about, okay, so there is this blurred border between artificial and our intelligence. And I was feeling positive in a way that, okay, I am maybe also artificial, that we are artificial in a way that we are taught certain systems, certain recommendation, value standards. So we are taught or we discover them so that our bodies and our minds are artificial in a quite a big proportion. And also I think that I was thinking, okay, so when there is such a big portion of artificiality, then what is the rest? Where is the humanity? What is really physical or bodily? So this was kind of a question which I tried to pose or formulate, and then I also thought it is in a way emancipatory that you accept certain characteristic. Okay, we do many automative decision, gestures, acts in our life. So this mechanism is somehow part of our body, but within that we still have this creative and imaginative power. So it was maybe kind of a tactic by accepting being a slave, somehow acknowledging that, okay, this is a slavery, but you can make a fun of a slavery, or you can somehow still step out of the slavery and see the slavery. So this is something which I think it is important to accept at the same time, but to resist.
Yeah. It's a very intelligent answer. Thank you.
I think there's many different points to that approach. You live in a society that is nearly entirely mediated through technology, digital technology, that is entirely controlled through the digital technology, that is driving everywhere. If you go to the remotest place where they extract anything, it's gonna be digitally controlled. So you live in a world that is completely sustained by that, and yet you have zero access to, because that is a slick little box that is completely impenetrable and impermeable to you. Right, so understanding the deep logic of computing at that kind of level, which is an artistic level, it's a felt level. It's not. I can explain you how a camera sensor work very very easily. It sees red, green, and blue because that's the way machine can see colors, and it emulates the male eye. That engineers have studied, and that's how they invented it. Okay, everybody can understand that more or less. Doing the process becomes an act of weird act of empathy, where you could start to dig and understand viscerally, empathetically, how the process is working, by which you gain several type of knowledge. One is kind of a weird feeling of empowerment. Okay, I understand how this works. It's not this kind of abstract thing that is magic and that I cannot control. And the second one is much more, to me, becomes much more metaphysical. You're at the point where we might or might not, but likely we might create, some intelligent artificial thing, which would be the crown of the enlightenment in the process, in a way, right? You become God. You made something that is completely artificial and sentient and conscious or whatever. At that point, I'm thinking it's quite interesting to stop to see that thing from a human level and to start seeing it from his perspective. This is his world, or her world, or I don't know. I'm gendering it to out of I don't know why, but you understand what I mean. So you start. There is many different strategy. One of them is that, and perhaps by doing that, you also, because it's so present in our world, because everybody recognizes the 16 segment display from your childhood, your watch, your things like that. It gives you like if you start to do it from that, maybe you can do it for bees, you can do it for an ocean, you can do it for, you start to empathize with like different systems that think differently, that sees differently. This one is perhaps like the first step, because it's still a human creation and still a bit by weird rule, but they're still human. You can still try to understand them.
There's still a lot of time for other questions. In the meantime, I still wonder, or what I really enjoy on the work of both of you is actually that you really transcend or fight this dualism, like the division between humans and algorithms, or nature and technology, because that still may be like the issue we have with modernity and with all those divisions, not only between the artificial and the so-called natural, but also between West and East, and art and non-art, and I don't want to even continue with other binarities, but if we admit this kind of entanglement of humans already always being, artificial, as for instance Reza Negarestani or Matteo Pasquinelli too, or we kind of transcend the duality of human culture and natural culture, like in neo-materialism of Donna Haraway and other people. Is this something that provides some, avenue or hopes? Is this something that we in art know and we just have to popularize or spread it more in society, or does it trigger some other kind of change? I'm sorry, I always try to limit myself not to ask philosophical and theoretical questions, but sometimes I just want.
And I think that's a super important strategy to break dichotomies. This is probably but there is a weird parallel between dichotomies and the dichotomical way, or perhaps more accurately reductionism, with the fact that you break things in part, and binary. They're all, that's also why I find it fascinating, is that they all tend back to the same way of thinking about the world. They tend to think in terms of opposite. They tend to think in black and white and 1 and 0. Yes, of course, I think it's super important that you manage to transcend that, and that's another thing, where you are in between being, in deep introspection and deep kind of logical thinking, thinking about combinatorial. We made a series of work that was quite sweet regarding that. It's we became fascinated with cellular automaton. For those who are not familiar with that, it's a class of algorithm, very simple algorithm that John von Neumann invented back when they were making the atomic bomb in Los Alamos. And at the time, there was, of course, two different school of thought. There was the Einsteinian way of thinking, where everything is predictable, everything is, there's no chaos in the universe. If you see noise, it's because your instruments are rubbish and you're measuring, you're picking up noise. But otherwise, there is a kind of underlying order to everything that is discoverable and that is humanly understandable. And the other school of thought was, of course, the guys that thought in terms of quantum mechanics, that said, well, no, chaos is apparent and it's everywhere around. And so we played with those algorithms that generate essentially their emergence, or they generate patterns that are ununderstandable, unexplainable, rather than ununderstandable. They're unexplainable. The pattern that are created from there, which you can also find in nature on shells and on things like that, appear as of nowhere. And I love the fact that with a simple algorithm you can baffle all the kind of underlying way of thinking of modern science, because we don't have any explanation for that. And if you ask neuroscientists, they will tell you, oh, the best model we have consciousness is also emergent, which is basically saying it's magic. We don't get it. right? And did all this kind of property. Of course, scientists are extremely aware of them nowadays. It's not that they're stuck in kind of reductionist thinking, but technology which has taken the forefront and capitalism do without those kind of subtleties. They apply it like boom, and I think I'm a bit lost the train of thought in the explanation. I have lost the train of thought. Sorry. Maybe Dušan can.
Maybe I will continue with there is this as you said example of this physical and mathematical inventions of the models which are unexplainable, and I think that it's a strange somehow distance between this very distant or very advanced mental models which we can create and we can somehow dream about them, but at the same time there is this practicality of everyday life, like bills, food, like appreciation, human acceptance. So there are this like lived qualities which we nowadays I feel like experience. There is a certain collapse, like there are very dramatical wars, genocides, and that. So I was thinking like, okay, but maybe we went too far with this imagination, and somehow we lost the ground, and that somebody else took the ground and is doing there something rude and unfair. And I was thinking, I think we are doing right, that we work in this very cosmical dimensions. We are able to imagine it, but still I'm somehow stuck with this conflicts which happens right now. And we were also yesterday talking about this activism and non-activism, like whether the art should act or can act like practically, or it has a different platforms and different influences. And I maybe somehow try to come back to the things which Sebastien said at the beginning about the quality of art speaking non-verbally. And I was at the lecture of a social political scientist, Paul Jackson. He was speaking about British right-wing movements. He studied the appearance of the right-wing movements, and he said that there is a kind of term, emotional trigger. So emotional trigger in society is something which you refer emotionally, you maybe not intellectual, but something which really drags your attention, and you follow it, you discuss about it, you identify with it. And we were speaking about it, that the art is one of the emotional triggers, because it really can transcend the language and really can speak. But so I think like this role, maybe not to become an activist or investigative journalist, which we can to be, but to think about the qualities which can really drag the attention of the wider public. And I think from my point of view, like empathy, solidarity, and inclusion is some values which I try to somehow keep in mind when working on something. And maybe we don't speak with like a complete Czech Republic, but thanks to the free entrance, I think that Rudolfinum speak to really, really wide public, and really, I think something is happen here, that the audience really can experience so many emotional triggers, and they have a somehow good potential. But it was also not maybe the answer to your question, but
Thank you. Some questions from the public? Yes.
Thank you. It's exciting. There's so much to unpack. I don't mean to bring it back to like the more philosophical research method side, but talking about informatics, I mean, we've already sort of unpacked the indivisibility between tech and human beings and artificial versus organic and, everything, all the examples you mentioned, plus glasses, pacemakers, hearing aids. I mean, literally so indivisible. And then looking at your work, especially in this room, this ongoing relationship that we have with technology as language and how this relationship with tech and informatics or everything, whatever, it's altering, it's redefining our humanity, right? What it means to be human and how we interact with the world. So my question is, how as artists, as makers, as creatives, do we balance this emphasis on research and your creative intuition and this part of you that's less opaque, and mechanical and more intuitive and expressive and irrational, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Those totally makes sense. I mean, it also depends on the medium you are able to express yourself in. Yeah, you see from what we do from our practice, you see one tiny sculpture. I invite you to come to like other shows that we have where we have the opportunity to make like installations of things that are much more immersive, even if I shy away a little bit from like the immersiveness because it's used and abused in many ways, but there is thing that you can affect at the kind of a sensorial level if you play with space, which I love to do, which are transcending those kind of things. And I think with one of the things I love, and I know that Conny and Eva also do very much, is to present this kind of like problematic in a way that is not entirely mechanical, not entirely cold and technological, because there are many ways and many avenues to transcend this and unpack the complexity of the subject by having much more irrational decision, much more artistic, playful, process in the way you present things. So not everything has to be like a bone dry. Hopefully, but it's also like a challenge of like creating like the show that Nadim is curating here is coming from a theory book, so it's very very well guided by his kind of curatorial and philosophical dismantling of the problematic. Yeah, so it's different type of show.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Is that all right? But I just mean for these works specifically in this show, I'm curious if the research, the conceptual side, is the guiding motivator or if it's more retroactive.
You would have to ask the individual artist. I'm sorry, I'm humbly declined to reply. In our case, no, it's like you need to see more of the sculpture of that series, but they're very playful. They're very like immediate. They go and the different materiality. I don't know. Julia just went away with the catalog from our latest show, so I can't show you. I don't know.
And in my case, I think the research and acts, physical acts and experiments comes like all together, but the research is maybe the starting point, like gaining some ground. It's for me, it's quite a safe start to do something, and maybe I will try to answer something which I heard from your questions at the beginning, that there is this strong technological service, from entertainment to appreciation to attention services. So there is this very complex invention and tool, which I think, for example, for me, I was like after the war in Ukraine exploded, so I was scrolling the news like for hours, like daily, every morning. I was just, and then I felt like depressed, and then in the evening the same. And for months I was like dragged by this habit, and then I tried to somehow control it, and then I realized that okay, I'm living in a conflict, in crisis, and this is the reaction of my body that okay, I want to distance myself from myself, like. And this tool somehow offers me many tactics how to distance myself, like drugs, alcohol does the same. So this distancing is something which I found that's this kind of tricky things, and the tools are designed to provide you with this temporal kind of happiness, relief, and so I felt like there has to be some brighter side, and then I discovered these memes. Like I felt like okay, the people are making fun of everything. They are making fun of themselves. They are making fun of their depressions. So I found like okay, there is some health in it. Like there is this courage to face these things. So and I felt like this is art for me. Like this is art. Like finding the way how to emancipate yourself and how to be like free. So that's it.
Thank you.
I don't know whether this kind of attempt to define art is not self-defeating. That finally, I think, isn't it more the case that art needs to be redefined every time you make it? And I suppose also this dichotomy between culture and nature follows the same pattern, that we are part of nature, and art is part of nature, and this shows much more perhaps that direction, that it's much more comfortable to think that way, that nature is us and us is nature, and even without us, nature will follow its own course. We are not that important.
Yeah, but I mean, you can revel a little bit more in that, like even the conception of nature is completely embedded in culture in the first place. There's nothing such as nature, it's a cultural construct, the way we understand it. So like that's a whole series of other work that we are very heavily engaged in, is how much does the digital technology alter the like very cultural definition of nature, and what do we consider natural or not? You even have like at the moment like people training AI to recognize what is wilderness, which is put as the antithesis of like the cultured landscape or whatever, which is also like oxymoronic in the first place, because you can't even define quantifiably what wilderness mean, right? It's a cultural construct once again. I don't know. I don't know exactly how I place myself there. I can tell you, like, to come back to your question, like in my personal case, like where is like research and where is the work starting, and what is informing the other, and it's a symbiotic relationship. It's a purpose, like if you've practiced for a bit of time, it becomes really symbiotic, because you don't remember what piece of research informed what, and how did the result of the work pushed you to get and look at other kind of thing. In our case, we we're quite geeky, so we're gonna go read the white papers and read those kind of articles and read like what is the current state of the affair. And we also engage with like various process. We make all the if we need programming, we make programming. If we need to cast something, we do it. If we need to paint, we paint. If we need to write poetry, music, we try to do it ourselves, because I think the practicing is also very, very important. It's not so only a cerebral pursuit, and you open up to mistake. I don't know. This is the vast topic that we are like trying to cover here.
Is this
I may even like pick myself on those last two questions. So the one concerning maybe research and the context, and maybe even your concerning like the definition of art. Because taking this particular nice, generous exhibition, as you yourself said, as an example, it may be very easily read as an exhibition about technology, but I think and what actually can be derived from what we have already said, there's something even more deeper going on. It's also an exhibition about metaphors or stories we tell, not only about technology, but about our world, and about how we construct our idea and therefore our world through the stories and through the metaphors that circulate in our culture. And this again might be really a very meaningful way how to still tackle the naive question, what is art? I agree that art is basically undefinable. Theodor Adorno already proved that in 60s, but the point is not really to have a function or role for art, but actually to make art fruitful in our understanding or cultivation of the world as we live in it. And it would be very irresponsible to leave all those metaphors and stories we tell each other onto popular culture or commercial culture. And here we are, in art space, developing more complex or more informed stories about the world, about how it's been created, how we inhabit it, and what technologies indeed are.
Yeah, I just have some maybe response. I think it's definitely true that the nature of art is that it's evolving and it's counter. It makes this counter moves, counter jumps. So it's a dynamic system. But what maybe I wanted to say is that also some of the aestheticians, they describe that we should not ask what is art, but when art happens. So it is also like old question or shift of the question. But for me, if I see or try to analyze the situation from the question when art happens, for me, it is when somehow body and minds and problems unites. Like I feel like I'm standing in front of the Monet pictures and I'm like physically attacked. My body is attacked by the colors, and I'm here in this cosmos and this strange years in between the people. So that's the encounter which happens there. This is for me an art. Sometimes it happens in front of the sculpture. Sometimes it happens in the cinema, in the concert. But this somehow unity, physical, mental, is something which is not happening for me in the entertainment. That's as far. In entertainment or while drinking, you somehow merging and disappearing into something not to be in your body. Somehow, because maybe sometimes it's not comfortable to be like solid and to be in your body. So entertainment and like commerce provides a different model how to escape this unity. So this is something which maybe somehow describe the moment when I experience artistically or I communicate with somebody artistically with the music, dance, whatever.
Remind us our true identity, and it's a very important question. where we came from or where we're going to, what's going to happen. And I think art helps us to see through this. Ideally, if you can find this identity, where you came from and where you're going to end up, you're probably going to end up where you came from, and it's somewhere.
Yeah, or you can be a bit more whimsical as well. It's like we've
Yes.
been talking about like
No,
massive.
I personally look at in the sky. Yeah, and that's where I came from, where I'm going to be to. And it's not the end as well. That's what is nice about it. So
Absolutely. There's a piece that I absolutely love, like that is that presents itself as quite whimsical. Is the John Ruffman like little video piece in like the booth that you can see just before, and it's him retelling like the story of this like a love affair he has, without having and the partner never want to be photographed, so he's searching in vain, trying to remember all the places he's been to in order to find like a Google view or like a street view photograph of it. Go and see it. It's very beautiful. It's very whimsical, and of course, it like any kind of really great piece, it opens up like many layers of interpretation about surveillance, about how do we deal with loss, grief, relationship, love, memorability. I mean, it's a very beautiful piece. It doesn't doesn't reach for like the ultra high definition that we were trying to aim for right now.
okay. Mhm. Now it just reminds me that always that this kind of basic identity, we wouldn't be. I wouldn't be able to talk to you. You wouldn't be able to talk to me. You wouldn't be able to essentially, exist. And then that's what's very nice about art. I think it helps us to connect with that kind of predicament. Anyway.
Technologies bambi. See?
Okay, we have still time for 2 3 questions. Yeah, there is one again.
Perhaps I can build on the question I asked earlier and kind of take this discussion from that direction that's going. It seems to me that what we're kind of talking about here is a deterritorialization, a kind of realization that the line between us and machines is an imaginary thing, that the line between artificial and natural is really, there is no line, right? Maybe I can ask a personal question, which is the scarier concept that comes from that idea, that we will find ourselves in machines or that we will find the machines in ourselves? You see what I say?
It depends. For everything you can see it as scary or you can see it as hopeful. I think they are both. It's both very scary to have like a singularity and like a conscious machine. It's also the opportunity for perhaps the first time in human history to realize that intelligence is not the premise of mankind. It's but that's a personal belief. It's not. My belief is that very many things are intelligence. Intelligence is just a property of a highly complex system. Make something super complex and super interconnected, and it will be intelligent. I mean, we have like start of intuition of it with like microbacterial network, fungal network, like with like biologists like see it more and more. Perhaps it's a shame that we need to arrive there, or perhaps it's a chance. I don't know. Like who knows? But it's not a process that is gonna be is very easily reversible. I don't know.
For me, I probably I'm scared of effectiveness of the tools which are somehow invented by us, that they can really consume and occupy a massive portion of our emotions and imaginations, and I feel like also kind of practically what's happening politically in our region, that there is vulnerability, so that we are somehow becoming less aware of the human to human shared qualities of living, and we are more and more rely on pre-prepared informations, medias or even stories, and because it is more comfortable than to encounter some unknown person and discuss with him, okay, what do you think about that? So instead of that, we just tend to scroll and have some instant shortcuts towards the problem. And I think that the more and more we lose control over and balance over the human to human encounter, the more we became kind of how to say that weak to counter to counterbalance some kind of manipulations, because there are like there are empires, let's say, and they are trying to steal like country or mineral resources or water or lithium or something. So that there are certain powers which tries to shift the reality and society towards more profit for them. So I think we have to be somehow aware that these devices, they have a certain manipulative and very strong manipulative power. So yeah, we have to somehow resist.
I agree with you, Dušan, on the like enforcement of individualism, like that people are much more separated, much more segregated, much more isolated. That's something that scares me a lot, because then there's no, on many levels, on the human level, but also on the organizational level, there's no way of forming a counterfront or like a reaction if we are whole individuals that are not talking to each other. I don't know. There's many things that are super scary, of course.
Thank you both.
Maybe one last question.
First time, of course. Oh, wow. This is. I'm gonna move a little bit to something more practical. And I will again, I apologize, use sonics as a example to help me describe. I've been sitting here for 90 minutes now, which is interesting because, okay, in maybe video works like Bill Viola or Christian Markley or something, are used to the duration. I would imagine that a vast number of people are walking through here in, at most, a matter of minutes. And what's interesting for me, there's been a lot of talk about space, and you mentioned liking to work with space. And as I look in this room over 90 minutes, the way I perceive these images has totally changed. The highlighting of green at one point, of now the black coming through, now I'm seeing patterns within the green and black. And I said I'd use sonics as an example. All rooms have a sonic signature. Not only sonic, but I'll use this from my practice. All rooms have a sonic signature, meaning that certain resonant frequencies, and I'm going to get to your wolves in a minute here. The harmonic series and the resonant frequencies recur in the room, which means that with the reverberation in the room, the echoing in the room, a conversation that happened here 100 years ago theoretically is still existing on a minuscule level, but it's here. So the entire history of this room, the entire sonic history, is present. And we're used to experiencing music and sound and actually most things in two ways, either vertically, even though we don't think of it as vertical, but it's vertical, or as a memory. And there was the question about the retroactive experience of the room. And I started thinking about, have I perceived this room totally differently now after 90 minutes than I did when I first walked in here or when I came a few days ago? And so my question is, it's now far more practical. But when you're working with these spaces, to what extent does the idea of duration, the idea of evolution of the experience, so evolution of the experience after it's out of your hands, how much of this comes into play when you're creating or when you're working?
And very much so. Very much so, but again, like it's difficult to say like in a talk. You need to comment and see like one of our show. Make the trip to Frankfurt might be a bit far for me, but there we have we place, for example, like some like colored filter in front of the a large window, and we calculated like all the kind of sun pass because we could not be present all the time in the room, and all the kind of like ambient condition in terms of lighting, in terms of temperature, in terms of like sound is taken care of, and it changes and evolves the whole day through, so that you will never see at the same time the same thing. That's like is very difficult. So yes, when you have the opportunity to do that, that's a trick. You can really play with that. We had a show in Langdon Foundation recently, which is a beautiful building by Tadawando, which was even more for treat to work with, because then you have also the permeability of the air. You have like the smell going through the building that you can choose to work on or not. I don't know. It's definitely something as an artist that we as artists take very much in consideration when you plan a show. But I think you can express this kind of thing in a solo presentation rather than in a group show. It's much more difficult because you have like a plethora of different things and you are not designing the space most of the time.
Yes, and of course the Rudolfinum has its like history of exhibiting, and it has a very strength kind of expressive decorations. So it has its visual characteristic which you really cannot avoid, and it's I like what you said about the memory of the sound and this fulfillment of the space which is condensed through the ages. But as Sebastien said, the group show is kind of different genre, but the space is part of of usually also of my works. And what I like also in the artworks, that's it really like sculpture or objects or even a video really redefines the geometry of the space. So you can have one small piece of plaster and somehow this wall and that wall change because something is happening there. So probably like in the sound there are really strange and fascinating miracles happens within the visual like forms towards the relations with the space.
But if you ask the curator Nadim Saman, it takes because I've been working with him a couple of times. He takes great care in how the work is presented, how it's done, how he responds to the space. It's one of like his great preoccupation. I'm sure you can ask him where the decisions. But it's like you're speaking about sound. It makes me think about like your question before. Where does that leave us if you start to deconstruct all the categories? If you start to melt the understanding of the human body into the infinity because it's interrelated with biomes that are breathing, it's permeable, etc., etc. What happens when you start to clash all those things? And perhaps music has something to say about that, because if you start to understand the universe as just a pulsation, as wave, then it doesn't really matter. There's like a big conundrum that is very famous in science, which is like duality wave particle. You can see everything as a particle, which is our existence. We are here and there, and we can't be we are in the present, we are embodied, but you can also be a wave, which means you are everywhere all the time. And scientists know that everything is subject to this kind of two aspects of it. Of course, we as very macroscopic, we don't access to that because it collapses. But in theory, why not? Like in theory, why are we so afraid of seeing the world beyond those things, as if it would turn to total nihilistic kind of, flattening of every category? And I think there's kind of something good about that, like to imagine yourself as a wave evolutor. Okay. Thank you for the question, which has been the last one appropriately about the duration. And we've depleted our official time. I don't know if it seems like it really was maybe enough. Anyway, we may continue with informal discussion. I'm gonna be here anyway if you still want to ask about anything pertaining to the exhibition. And I hope that you enjoyed this a little or time of, let's say, white cube or white box, and we're ready to return to the black boxes and black sides of our digitally equipped homes. And hopefully you will return here, not only to Rudolfinum, but to the art space. So thank you for coming. Best.